We're going to sew the patterns now. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the thread I use and machine again at this stage. I use a fine nylon thread. This is for a repairman. Most of the spools that you order are size 69. This is size 46, considerably finer. It looks nicer. It doesn't look as bulky. You can use your heavier weight threads. I did for a year before I found a source where I could buy the colored spools. Experiment with your colors. I will take, and did for a long time, I would take and I would snip a piece of whatever top I'm going to be sewing on, and I'd sew a variety of colors on it until I found a combination I liked. Don't be afraid to mix up your reds and greens and blues. Something that you think won't look good together really surprises you sometimes. Start paying a little more attention to the boots that are coming into your shop, or if you don't have a shop, go down to a boot store and look at some of them. You'd be surprised at the color combinations they come up with. You can even go to the extreme of using the variegated thread. That's a thread that changes colors every foot or so. I don't use any of that. I like doing it this way. I'll go ahead and sew this pattern for you and try and comment on things I watch out for while I'm sewing it. Again, this machine has a roller foot. I can't emphasize roller feet enough, especially in the boot construction. You are working with very fine leather. You're working with a system where you're going to sew and turn constantly. A roller foot does that. It'll feed with less vibration. There's no bouncing up and down like that. It's a constant pressure. Rolls with you. When you get to your second and third row of stitching, this roller foot gets out of the way. I mean, you're not sewing through a set of feet, so you can see what you're doing. This machine has a knee lift on the foot here, so that you can keep both hands free. I myself sew with one hand on the pulley, power pulley, to where I can stop my needle where I want it. When I come to a point where I'm going to turn, I stop it with the needle down, and I pivot with the needle down. You never back up with any of these flatbed machines. If you back up, you're going to throw an extra loop and you'll have a big ball underneath the thread. If you have to set your tension on your machine in any direction, set it so that the bobbin tension has more, so that if you're going to get any color lock anywhere, it's going to lock on the inside of your boot instead of on the outside. Okay, I think we've pretty well covered all the stuff there. I'll go ahead and sew this one in. As you can see, this silver marker that we've laid out gives me a very good idea where to sew the pattern. There's no trouble seeing it. I can touch it all I want. I don't smear talcum powder all over. So I'll go ahead and sew this one, and we'll...
Some machines also have a personality that they only like you to turn the leather one way or the other, or they'll drop a stitch sometimes too.
You bet.
So get to know your machine so that you know what they're going to do when you get to a certain place.
Again, I stop with the needle down, and I pivot it this way. See, I'm not even touching the presser foot. If you didn't have a knee lift, you'd have to be back here constantly lifting this thing up. If you don't lift it up and you go to turn your leather, the top foot will roll, but you're gonna tear up your lining with the feed dogs underneath. So you have to lift it up. You'll get to know which patterns you like to sew, what style of pattern you like to sew, and you'll learn how to interpret them for your own personal sewing technique. If you alter a pattern while you're sewing, alter all four of them. Don't forget what you've done. There are boot makers that contend that this is the way you have to sew with both hands free and learn how to stop your machine with your feet. I don't know. I do it this way. I like it this way. Personal taste. Again, this center line becomes very valuable to me because any of the points that you have, such as in this pattern that have points going towards the center, you can stop at the same distance from it. Let you symmetrically line up your pattern again. I've got one point coming up right in the middle of it. This center line tells me how to keep my all 3 or 4 rows of my thread lined up on that center. It ends up looking like a much nicer job.
It may look like he's missing the lines, but he's actually allowing for future rows on some of those points, especially.
Again, this is like I said, one of my favorite patterns, so I know what I want to do with it. I have the advantage over you that I know what it's going to look like. Sew this one top completely through so that you'll get some idea how to line it up. The second row and the third row are a little trickier than the first, and you're going to want to sew just as close as you can to your first row. We're doing this particular boot all in white so that it does show up a little better for you. Cut all your excess thread off so you don't end up sewing over it again. When you come down to a point, like I'm coming down to here, you're going to have to go a stitch or two beyond the point so that your point stays symmetric. Go a stitch or two farther than you think you have to. See, now this is too short. I don't know if you can pick up on that or not.
Yeah, we can.
If I were to come back on that now, I'd run right back into the first row of thread. So you're going to have to come down, trying to keep the line symmetric. Also, remember to stop in your corners the same distance you are out from the other line of thread here. I'll use this move. If you're, say, a 1/16 of an inch apart here, you stay a 1/16 of an inch away from the corner, because if you don't, you're going to run up in there blind and it's not going to look right. Stitching patterns is nothing but practice, sewing them over and over and over, and you'll develop more skill with it the more you do. Don't worry about what your first ones looked like. We all had first boots.
If you've never had a roller foot machine, you'll sure appreciate that after trying to set on a walking foot machine, as I did. I thought I could sew about anything with a walking foot, but I proved myself wrong by making a mess of my first set of patterns with a walking foot machine.
The roller foot just seems to be geared to do a nicer job. Another way you might want to try laying out your patterns until you learn how to interpret them is take and have a pencil lead that's about a 1/4 inch wide when you stitch your pattern, and that's just about how wide 3 rows of stitching is, so that when you draw out your first patterns, you'll have accommodated that 3-row pattern right in with your stitching, with your sketching, I mean. And that works pretty slick. Usually you end up taking up about 1/4 of an inch with 3 rows of stitching. I think we could probably cut her till I'm done with this one, and then we'll show them what she's like.
I think we might want to see all 3 rows on this one.
All right? Oh, okay. Okay. We're not going to show you the sewing on all 4 tops because you can just back her up and watch whatever you want. I think we're trying to cover everything on this one top that we feel you need to know about. This 3115 works very well for this. It's also a relatively cheap machine to maintain. There are parts for them everywhere.
The 3115, a lot of them are available from tailoring shops, but you'll have to put the roller feet on it. So you can pick them up for sometimes $200-300 plus a table. They were a factory tailoring machine when they first came out. It's a Singer 3115. This one says Chandler on it, but that's because it was rebuilt by Chandler.
You'll probably run more miles of thread through this one than all your other ones combined. And I think part of the reason I hang on to this one is because of the fact that it is a fairly inexpensive machine to maintain. I've discovered that this machine likes a little bit coarser, little stiffer nylon thread. I've got different degrees of nylon thread, and some of the spools I bought from Rice were soft nylon, and this machine just will not sew them in this lighter weight. If I put a heavier weight thread in it, it does fine. But with this coarser weight nylon thread, it doesn't have any trouble at all.
We'll be talking about the addresses of some of these places to get the roller feeds and such at the end of the course, too.
Okay, one more to go. My first set of patterns that I sewed, I sat up and sewed till midnight one night. It took me almost 7 hours to sew a set of four patterns. I sewed them on a home treadle machine, an old Singer treadle machine. And I don't know, I thought they looked all right. They didn't, but I thought they did.
If you're a careful and conscientious worker on these, you will always find that your flaws show up worse to you than anyone else.
Yeah, most of the things you worry about when you're making the boot, the customer doesn't even notice. We'll go through touching up and so forth when we get done with these boots. We'll show you how to touch up minor things and give you some clues on water stains and so forth. normally sew all in white because I think it looks kind of drab. This would have been, with this bone colored bottom, you could have probably put a row of green on it. Or even a yellow, and it would look very nice. Well, we figured we'd do it all in white for you so you'd get a sharper look at what she looks like when she's done. Experiment with your colors, you'd be surprised what you can come up with. This would have also been a good boot to use that variegated thread on.
Also, if you find a color you want to try, but it's a little bit loud, you can put it in the middle and put something calmer on the outsides, and it'll tone the one down some too.
Yeah, that works in both directions very well. You can bring out a red and a brown boot very easy by putting a few more rows of red thread on it. Okay, this one's got 3 rows on it. Just like that.
I'll tip it towards you. There we go. Okay, I think, Nelson, you got something else?
Oh, I also at this time sew the top. In fact, I should do that for you. This is another time when your center line becomes valuable to you. I put at least 2 rows of stitching along the top here. Always stop on the center. Even if you have to come down a little bit farther, stop on your center line and then go back up. I'll put 2 rows on here for you. So we finish this top completely. I found a pretty good way of doing this and keeping it consistent from one boot to another. You simply take the other one of your patterns and put her down there and just run onto it from the other one. And you're sewing in the same direction again. I do that when I'm sewing patterns as well. Back to the original.
A lot of times you can use the imprint that your roller makes as a guide also to help you keep from roaming around too much.
There you go.
You have to tip it towards you. Alrighty.